Hey everybody, welcome back to Board Game Blender. I am Zee Garcia and this is episode 24, Sugar and Spice and Everything Dice. Oh yeah! We are going to be talking about dice mechanisms, we are going to be highlighting games, we're going to be comparing games, we'll have interviews, overviews, all sorts of things. So if it's got dice in it, it's in this episode. I hope you will enjoy the show. And let's kick it off. Here we go.
Hey friends of the blend, you know there's so many different ways that dice are used in games and so many different types of dice. It used to be that everybody had a six-sided die with 1 through 6 pips on it, but that's not the way it is anymore. Now every game, it seems, that has dice is trying to find new and unique ways of using them. So let's take a look at some of my favorite dice in board games. Sometimes you'll have your regular six-sided die and it's just multicolored. It looks a little bit different, but nothing actually is different about the functionality to it. Other times you'll have a six-sided die where they've actually changed everything on it. This one right here is from Small World, and if you want a very concise, clear, and accurate rules description of Small World, check out some of the earlier Blender videos. This right here, you got a 20-sided die. This is from Wrath of a Charlatan, and the great thing about this die is it does everything you need in the entire game. This determines all the combat outcomes, how spells, disarming traps, getting rid of poison, everything on this one die. It's pretty awesome that you can get all that out of one die, because other games require a whole bunch of die or dice, such as Mice and Mystics or Star Wars Imperial Assault. But the great thing with these is they pack so much information into one side. I mean, this right here, you've got the burst symbol that does certain things in the game. You've got, obviously that's a ranged attack there, and then you've got the actual accuracy. Same thing here, you know, you've got the burst symbols that are for damage. You've got accuracy with the numbers, surge, which will trigger extra attacks and abilities like that. Then you've got the defense die here, the black and the white ones that block damage or evade the surges, and oh man, there's the all-powerful X symbol here that completely negates an attack. Just so much information packed into these dice on each side. And of course, everybody loves cheese. Then you got some games that the entire game is dice. And it's still a six-sided die, but it's entirely different than any of the standard six-sided dice games you've ever played in the past. And this right here, of course, is zombie dice. Speaking of zombies, one of the most popular zombie games in recent memory is Dead of Winter, and people hate the die in Dead of Winter. Well, actually not these. Those are just regular small six-sided die. People hate this one because that one roll, you roll this thing, that kills your guy, and maybe more than one guy. I have never seen so much anger directed towards a single die in my entire life as what this has gotten in the forums on BGG. But of course, my current favorite are the die for Mage Knight. When you're playing, you roll these die, and this is all your mana right here. And if it's daytime, and you roll night mana, well, those are locked. You can't use those anymore. And you're going to be rolling these throughout your turn, and sometimes you might roll a black for the night again, and that gets locked out. You can't use it during the daytime. But if it's nighttime, the opposite's true. If you roll the daytime mana, well, that can't be used now, but everything else is good to go. See, that one right there will be locked out. There you go. There's just some of my favorite dice in board games, the different ways they're used. It's such a plethora of designs and unique ways that they are used. So I hope you enjoy this segment, and until next time, if you're bored online, board offline.
Howdy gamers, it's time once again for Buy, Try, or Deny. I'm Indiana John. And today we're taking a look at dice games. And I gotta say that dice are one of my favorite things about board games. I just love rolling them up. I love the different shapes and sizes and colors. I even got my handy dandy crocheted homemade dice bag that my buddy Phil made for me. And I just have a whole bunch of different kinds of dice. I just love everything about dice. Anyway, so today we're gonna be taking a look at 3 different dice games. And I picked out games this time that aren't just games that have dice in them, but games where the dice rolling is one of the main elements of the game. It's like the main attraction. So, are you ready? Well, let's roll. Today's buy game is a dice version of a game that's really increased in popularity quite a bit lately, and that's Pandemic. This is Pandemic: The Cure. Now, Pandemic Legacy was released recently to great accolades and buzz because of the way that it can change the course of the game and the rules and the board during multiple games. But for a single game of Pandemic, I really enjoy Pandemic: The Cure, the dice version, even better. In this game, you have specific roles that you take on, and you get a set of customized dice to go along with those roles, with custom faces that have special abilities on them. You're going to roll those dice and you're going to use them to cure diseases, which are also represented by dice on the more or less board. This is a really, really fantastic implementation. It's one of a few times when a dice version is just as good, if not better, than the basic version. And I found that most of the people that are in my game group, given the choice between playing Pandemic and Pandemic: The Cure, actually prefer Pandemic: The Cure. So I think it's just a really fantastic design. If you haven't tried it, and if you like Pandemic, then definitely give this one a try. If you've never tried Pandemic, this is a good place to start. This is Pandemic: The Cure, my buy game. Today's try game is a updated or kind of tricked out version of a classic dice game that most people either love or hate. That's Yahtzee. This is Yahtzee Free For All, and this is a game where you are still trying to roll those Yahtzee combinations, but instead of having a score pad, you have those combinations represented on cards in a central board that you will claim, but you're not allowed to score those cards until it gets back around to your turn, and then you can bank those points. So it gives other players an opportunity to steal those cards if they happen to roll better combinations than the one that you did. So it adds an interesting competitive element to Yahtzee. Now it's a try for me, because if you don't like Yahtzee, then you're probably not going to like this because it's Yahtzee. But it does add some things that I think make the game a lot of fun and make it a little bit more hectic and competitive. A lot of gamers would be interested to know that this game was actually designed by Richard Borg, who is the designer of the Commands and Colors series, games like Memoir 44, as well as many others. So his name's not really on the box or anything, but this is actually a gamer, a designer game version of Yahtzee, if you will. So I think if you like Yahtzee and you like dice rolling games in general, you're going to enjoy this one. It's definitely one you can bring out to the table with non-gamers or people who are familiar with Yahtzee and kind of push them in that gamer direction. So you can't go wrong if you're looking for a game like that with my try game, Yahtzee Free For All. Today's Deny game is a game I tried at Gen Con 2015 for two reasons. One, because it's a dice game, and the other because it uses one of my favorite intellectual properties, Firefly. I'm talking about Firefly Shiny Dice. Now, this is a game where you're rolling dice that represent the different characters in the Firefly world, and you're rolling them up and using them to complete objectives and fly your ship and complete missions and that kind of stuff, take on jobs. But what I found in this game is that the downtime is kind of ridiculous, and you don't have anything to do when it's not your turn, and people's turns can take quite a while depending on if they're able to get an additional turn, because there's a mechanic for that. But so you're watching people just sort of roll dice and move them around, and then when it's your turn to roll dice, you roll those dice, and there's the luck element to it, I guess, but then there's also kind of this optimal play thing. Like there's definitely an optimal way that you can combo dice together, and if you're not good at making combos and stuff like that, then I just think it's not very much fun. And so the random element of dice is, I think, sort of taken away in that game. So it just wasn't any fun for me, and I just don't. I don't think it'd be fun for a whole lot of people, actually. I would only play it with 2 maximum, maybe play it with 1, possibly play it with 0. So that's my Deny game, Firefly Shiny Dice. Well, there you have it, 3 dice games. Our Deny game, Firefly Shiny Dice, our Try game, Yahtzee Free For All, and our fantastic buy game, Pandemic: The Cure. What is your favorite dice game? Be sure to let me know in the comments, and I'd also really like to invite you to subscribe to my brand new YouTube channel, Game On Video Reviews, and follow me on Twitter at IndieBoardGamer, where pretty soon I'm going to be giving away some pairs of Game On dice and some of these cool Catan fuzzy dice from Mayfair Games. So, until next time, game on!
Hello, welcome to Boards and Crafts, a place for quick tutorials of snacks and crafts inspired from games, for games, and all about board games. Since this week is all about sugar and spice and everything dice, I thought it would be fun to create a little snack that is Dice Krispies. Let's get started. What you will need for this snack includes Rice Krispie cereal, marshmallows, butter, and black frosting or gel or chocolate chips, really whatever you would like to use for the pits. This is your snack, so create it however you would like. Before making the crispy treats, line a pan with aluminum foil so that the treats won't be difficult to get out later. You can also line the pan with butter so that it doesn't stick. In a pot, melt 3 tablespoons of butter on low heat. Add the marshmallows and stir it occasionally. When the marshmallows are fully melted, turn off the oven and add the Rice Krispies and mix it all together. Pour the mix into the pan. When it's cooled off a bit, use saran wrap to help flatten the tops of the treats and let it fully cool. When it's cool enough, remove it from the foil and the saran wrap and cut it up into square pieces. Using the frosting, gel, or whatever you chose, add the pits to create your own Diced Krispies. And that's it. If you guys have any ideas for tasty treats or creative crafts, comment below or tweet them at me at RTRobot. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope that you have a good day.
Hey folks, welcome to 2 for 1. This is a segment for those of us who own too many games or maybe want too many games, in which I'll be covering 2 games, both with interesting characteristics, but then I'll be going over a 3rd game that I think combines the best aspects from each of those games. You give up 2 games, I give you 1. Here we go. Today we are talking about light dice game fillers. The first game, Age of War. Age of War here is a simple conquest game in a Yahtzee style in which you are rolling, conquering castles and trying to protect those castles until the end of the game so you can get the highest score. A very nice, attractive game, but lots of downtime in this one. There is nothing for you to do while it is not your turn, and the problem, of course, is aggravated the more players you add. The other game we are taking a look at is Rolling America. In Rolling America, you are involved in every turn, but it largely does not matter what your opponents do on their turns because you are simply annotating on your own sheet and you'll compare scores at the end of the game. In fact, you could play this solitaire. And so we're going to take the best aspects from both of these games and we are going to come out with Bonanza, the dice game. Würfel Bonanza. And in this one, you are rolling dice on your turn, but it does matter what you roll to your opponents and you'll be watching what everyone is doing on everybody else's turn. It takes the aspects from both games in which you are rolling Yahtzee style, but it makes you care about what your opponent's doing, which dice they're saving, which dice they're re-rolling. And I think this one is still a really nice filler, a very attractive theme, but a little bit more to think about in this one. Certainly still a filler, but it just makes you care during your turns. And it's fast and gives you something to do all the time. So there you have it, your 2 for 1 game, Bonanza, the dice game.
Hello friends of the Blend, and welcome back to Retro Board Game Corner. Today we're talking about dice games. Anyway, my pick for this episode is Star Trek: The Next Generation collectible dice game. Published in 1996 by Five Rings Publishing Company. This is a 2-player space game which you're trying to outmaneuver your opponent. Well, let me set this up and show you how it works. That kind of hurt. What I have set up here is for the Enterprise. There's also a Borg and a Klingon vessel, but they all pretty much run the same way. So for example's sake, we'll just use the Enterprise. The first thing you need to do is give a damaged dice to your opponent. This is what they will roll when they have successfully hit you, and it tells what dice will be damaged on this. So you just give that to the other player. And then you're going to need to set up your control panel. You'll set your warp core power output dice here, your warp core integrity here, your reserve power here, your ship facing dice all the way to highly defensive. Every one of your shields will be at 20, and then you'll have your command dice, your movement dice, your repair dice, your sensor dice or special dice, and your weapon dice. Now the object of the game is to get the warp core integrity dice all the way down to 0, so there's a warp core breach and ultimately destroys the ship. At the beginning of each turn, you will set up this screen to hide what you're going to be doing for each turn. So once you set up the screen, you will choose a number here on your Warp Core power output, which will power up these dice. Now the dice have values on them. This the 6-sided dice is valued 1. The 8-sided dice is valued 2. The 10-sided dice is valued 3. And the 12-sided dice is valued 4. Now it takes that much power to move each one of those dice up to the active positions so you can be ready to use them. So once you have activated all your dice and moved them up to the active position, let's say that I decided to do all these dice to move them up to the active position, then you can go ahead and remove your screens, and both you and your opponent will make sure that your Warp Core power output matches what you have put up into the active position. If it doesn't, then your opponent gets to move back the dice down to the online position so it could be the correct number that you have allocated to all the different systems. After you have done all this, then you will go ahead and take what they call a volley. You will go ahead and pick one dice to roll and do its action, and then it's the other player's turn to choose one dice to roll and then do their action. Now each one of these dice, I'm not going to explain what each facet is here because then we'll be here forever, but basically with rolling this dice, you'll move your ship and rotate your ship along this helm track here. With the repair dice, you'll go ahead and repair your different systems or your shields over here. With your sensor dice, they do different things, whether it be give you more power, repair your shields, or act out of turn. And the weapon dice is just what it is, to attack your opponent. Now, like I said before, the object of the game is to get this dice, which is the Warp Core Integrity dice, all the way down to 0. And you'll do that by firing at the ship that you're firing upon, and each side of the ship starts out at 20. So obviously your object is to make a hole in the ship, and then you can start damaging some of these dice or damaging their Warp Core Integrity. Now, the first person that can destroy the other ship wins the game. Games take about 30 minutes to play. This game came out about the same time that the movie Star Trek First Contact came out. Now, the initial release was the Enterprise and the Borg Sphere. Shortly after that, the Klingon expansion came out, but in very limited release. Now, sad to say that this game did not last very long, and the publishers did promise more ships and more expansions in the year 1997, but they were never released. Well, join me next time when I showcase another great game from the past. May your rolls be high.
Hi there, here's Ilya.
And here's Alina.
So, today we're going to talk about a game with dice and its Predator.
This game talks about quite specific time in Roman history, where you represent Roman engineer who's trying to build the town and Hadrian Wall and try to win favor of the Caesar.
Overall, this game is a worker placement game with dice, where the dice are your workers. And you're sending your workers to various tasks, such as building new buildings into the town, or getting more resources, gold, or going to the market, etc. So
what is really interesting in this game, I wanted to talk about the Predator, is unique thing is that your workers are dice, and pips on the dice represent their experience. The more experienced worker will give you more benefits and bring back more resources.
yeah, but there is one thing. Whenever a worker gets to the experience 6, it means he retires. And when he retires, you get some points from that, but you are not able to use him again except with a very special tile building there. So the other thing here, the cool thing, is that you need to pay your workers, but you also need to pay pension to your retired workers who you are not able to use. That's a great thematical thing here. And whenever you cannot pay them, the morale will drop and you will get negative points at the end of the game.
But as workers are retiring, they retire actually quite fast, faster than you think. You need to get new workers. They don't come, you just don't pick up the dice, but you have the pool and you need to send them to training. And they are in the training during 2 rounds. So you need to send them to work, to training earlier, so you would get them later. So you would end up with 2 workers only for the round.
Yeah, that's really cool.
When I was a young boy, I worked like a horse in a field. Now I can relax like a real man.
Oh, I'm done for today.
What are you doing, my boy? That's only 1 brick over there.
Wow, it's completely normal.
It's not normal at all. In that way, you're never gonna build a hatred's wall. Get away from here. I'm gonna show you how it's done. In my days, I was doing the best I could, so get away. You see how it's done? That's the real job, like every boy should have done. You see? That's a big pile of brick here.
This game has some issues though. Some tiles may seem overpowered, but for that you can go to the game forums and look for these official errata or official variants from the designer, or come up with your own ideas how to balance tiles. It's really easy, whatever you want. But I think you will enjoy the game more if you will overcome these small problems.
Overall, we find this game really unique. It's really engaging how you manage your workers. You can decide to send a more experienced worker to bring you more resources, but that worker will retire sooner. So the way you manage your workers, it's really challenging and really interesting.
Yeah. So Würfel Reviews recommends Predator. Is it so?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Thumbs up? Great. But I think we'll see you next time. We'll definitely see you next time.
Yeah.
Is it so? Yeah. So till next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey there, I'm John from JonGetsGames, and today we're talking about dice in board games. Now when I really thought about what most appeals to me about dice in games, I think it has to be how much you get out of such a simple act of taking this set of cubes with little marks on it, roll them on a table, and so much can happen from that based from game to game. You might succeed the mission, you might fail at killing the monster. There's so many different things you can do just based off of this random set of cube faces that plop up. And I love that you can get so much game out of it as well. And I really thought about a game that hones in on just the dice with no other frills. The number one thing I thought of was Can't Stop. So this right here is my copy of Can't Stop. You can see it's quite beat up, it's faded, lots of tape on it. This is the 1980 version. I think one of the first versions ever put out, and this is the one I played as a child. I have very fond memories of playing this at like 7 or 8 years old and just loving it. And the way this game works is you simply have this big stop sign right here, and along the top you have numbers going from 2 to 12. And all you do in the game is you roll 4 dice, and then you have to pair them up together in some way or another. Like these 2 dice go together like this, or these go together like this. And you add the pips on these D6s, and so you will be able to get values 2 through 12. And the way they've made the board, you have a lot more spaces on the 7 column, which is the most commonly summed up number from 2 dice, and then the 2 and the 12 are the least common, and there's very few spaces. And all you're doing is racing from the bottom up to the top. And once you have put your little piece on the top, that kills the column. And all the tension of the game comes from this. On your turn, you just roll the dice, and you move some bits up the board, and you can keep rolling forever. It's the epitome of the push your luck game, that's for sure. And you keep going until you either choose to stop, or if you can't stop, which is the name of the game, then you're going to end up rolling a set of dice which won't let you move anything up. And at that point, you lose all of your progress, and then it's the next person's turn. So you have so much tension just from rolling these boring, plain little D6s. And people might be standing up, people would be groaning or throwing or laughing. There's all sorts of things that can happen from just the act of rolling 4 dice. And I love that about this board game, and I love that about so many other games, but I think this one definitely hones in on that experience the best.
Hey
Hey everyone, it's MAGGIBOT, and today we're talking dice games. My favorite dice game to come out of the end of last year was Grand Austria Hotel. This is a dice pool drafting game. So on a given round, you will roll all the dice in the pool and line them up by their value. Each player then starts taking actions by selecting a die from one of the different actions. If I select a 2, I'm going to take some cubes, and the number of that value that were rolled is going to affect how strong the action is, whether I get more cubes or get discounts or all kinds of things. So what you want is the action you want with several dice in it. There are 2 ways to affect what dice are rolled. You may either pay $1 in-game to act as if you rolled an extra die of that value, or, and this is open to every player, you may pass instead of taking your actions after everyone's either taken theirs or passed. You take a die away from the pool that's left over and you re-roll the whole pool. So if you're just looking for a specific die to come up or a couple dice to come up, hopefully in 1 or 2 categories, you can just keep passing until the dice pool is much smaller than it starts out as. The rest of the game has fabulous artwork, and the only biggest downsides are the 4-player downtime can be an issue with the space in between turns, as well as the rules text concerning employees can be kind of confusing because it was a little hard to find in the book, but they did an okay job with the rest of it, and the game was pretty easy to learn. I'd highly recommend picking it up or at least trying it if you see it around town, and I'll see y'all next time for the next Blunder. Bye!
Hi everybody! There's something charming about a good old 6-sided die. Sure, there are fancier dice nowadays, but I think it was my unfortunate childhood love affair with Yahtzee that deeply instilled an affection for 6-sided dice. Today, games use 6-siders in a myriad of ways. They can be spaceships, resources, or workers. They're customized in dozens of ways. But how many games are built completely around the good old standard D6? And really, how good could they be? Well, in the case of Quicks, apparently really good, since it was a Spiel des Jahres nominee as well as a Mensa Select winner. It also has a sibling game in Quinto, so let's take a look at 2 of my favorite dice rolling games that highlight the elegance of a simple 6-sider. In Quicks, players get their own score sheets and take turns being the active player. The sheets have a red and yellow row that go from 2 to 12, and a blue and green row that go down from 12 to 2. Points are based on how many numbers you can mark off in rows. Each turn, the active player rolls 2 white dice and a die in each of the 4 colors. The active player can mark off a number that equals the sum of 1 of the white dice and 1 of the colored dice, but it has to be in a row that matches that color. The trick is you can never mark off a square that goes to the left of one you've already marked, so if you start with the red 5, let's say, you can never mark off the red 4, 3, or 2. If a player chooses or cannot mark off a number, then she has to tick off one of the dreaded white misthrow boxes. Meanwhile, the other players can mark off a number in any row that matches the sum of the 2 white dice. I love this element of the game because it keeps all the players involved during all turns. Once a player has 5 numbers in a row marked off, if they roll the number to the far right of the row, that player can lock the color, which removes that die from the game. When 2 dice are locked, or if a player has marked off all 4 misthrow spots, the game is over and the scores are tallied. In Quinto, players have a score sheet with an orange, purple, and yellow row of circles and a few pentagons. Like Quicks, an active player will roll dice and the other players will have the option of taking an action. Unlike Quicks, Quinto is open field, so the players get to choose which numbers they write into the spots, according to some specific rules. The active player chooses to roll any number of the 3 dice, and the sum is written in a row that matches the color of 1 of those rolled dice. The numbers must increase from left to right, and the numbers can't repeat in a column. Again, the active player has to fill in a shape or mark off a misthrow spot. The game ends when someone has filled in 2 rows or has marked off all 4 misthrows. But scoring is a little intricate. Complete columns get the points that match the number in the hexagon. Complete rows score the value of the rightmost number. Otherwise, each filled-in spot is worth 1 point. And, of course, those misthrows count against you. There is a surprising amount of tension in this game. The decision on where you put the numbers is surprisingly strategic, and while the luck of the dice is merciless, you don't feel out of control since you choose where you write the numbers. So which one is right for you? Well, in my case, the answer is obviously both. But in general, Quicks feels a little bit lighter than Quinto and is probably better for families and non-gamers, while Quinto is consistently preferred by the more ardent gamers I know. Quicks is easy to find in your local game store or even in big box stores, but unfortunately Quinto is a little harder to get in the US, but I think it's well worth the effort to get a copy. I don't know exactly what it is I love so much about these roll and write games, but I really do love them. There's just something about the simplicity, the simultaneous gameplay, the quickness, and the surprising depth that makes them really great games. See you next time.
Hey folks, for today's Quirky Game, I'm taking a look at Wool Rules, baby, Wool Rules. This one is about us being sheep and protecting our wool because whoever is going around cheering us is like some crazy person and they just got some new snips, the Snips 2010, which I'm assuming is when this game came out. And it's just a bizarre theme, but the game the idea is straightforward. It's a game in which you roll dice, Yahtzee style, and you collect cards. So it's a set collection dice rolling game. But what makes it quirky, besides the theme, of course, is the fact that all of those things are handled in a quirky way. For instance, the dice rolling is just with 3 dice, and they are an 8-sided die, a 10-sided die, and a 12-sided die. Again, you like Yahtzee, you roll, keep one, and then finally roll the last one. You are going to be bidding. And you are going to be bidding using cards with numbers, so it's a simultaneous bid, and using the little tiny clothespins that are adorable, really small, and you clip them onto the number you want to bid, and then everybody reveals them simultaneously, and that's what your bid is. The higher the number is, the earlier you are going to roll, but if you don't make your total, then oops, and then the guy goes after you would have a lower total, but they might make what they are trying to go for, so you got to be careful. However, if you bid too low, the set of cards that is on the table might be gone, depending on how quickly you make your number. You will grab 1, 2, or 3 cards from the table and keep them, and again, you are making sets. Now, there are some special cards out there, the 007. That one, a single card or even 2 of the same do nothing, but 3 007 cards, then you score 7 points. There's a dog that has its own rules, and there's another card that you want a specific amount of. Besides that, then you have the cards themselves all have a point value, and they have a dice modifier up in the corner. And so cards that are worth a lot of points typically will hurt you on the next roll. They'll have like a -2 or something. Whereas sometimes, if you take a crummy card, then you have a good modifier for your next roll. So, an interesting game. Very quick, simple, straightforward, but unique and sort of quirky in the way it handles that basic dice rolling thing you've seen 100 times. I like this one. If you are looking for a Yahtzee style game with a little bit of, simultaneous bidding, a little bit of pushing your luck that has some quirks to it, then this is not a bad one. I would recommend it. Wool Rules! Check it out, guys.
Over a quarter of the board games in our board game collection are dice games, but a disproportionate number of those games are found at the top of our favorites list.
Today we're going to focus on Champions of Midgard. This is a game by Grey Fox Games, 2 to 4 players, lasts about 60 to 90 minutes. Worker placement with dice rolling combat.
Let's take a closer look.
The board has various spots to place your workers. The Runesmith gives you a one-time special power. The Sage's House gives you a mission, and it also lets you peek at a journey card. The Worker's Hut gives you an extra worker. The Jarl's Longhouse gives you first player, and an additional swordsman. The church converts money to favor. The shipwright lets you build a private ship. There are numerous other places to get resources and various types of warriors. There are 3 types of warriors that you can get. The swordsmen are the white dice, and they're the weakest. The spearmen are a little bit stronger, and the black dice are the axemen, which are the strongest warriors of all. You gather resources and warriors to fight trolls, Draugr, and journey to fight monsters. For 2 players, you remove 2 of the market stalls. You only have 2 private boats to purchase. You get 4 workers instead of 3, and you only have 3 monsters to fight. Other than that, it plays just like multiplayer.
So there you have it. Champions of Midgard is a great worker placement game with the added bonus of dice combat. I really like this game. 2 players works great. There's not much difference. We pointed them out, just a few little small differences that tightens the game up a little bit. I love worker placement games. Probably my favorite games are worker placement. And this adds the dice rolling combat on top of it, so it's just the perfect game for me.
I like this game a lot, but I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it because I am not the best dice roller in the world, so these little swordsmiths are the bane of my existence. I'll get so excited and think I have overkill and go into a battle and roll nothing. And so I get frustrated sometimes with that because of that, but I love the way this game is set up, but the dice hate me.
Yeah, so there's ways to mitigate that. You can use your favor tokens to get rerolls. There's some rune smith items that let you get rerolls and things like that. So there's ways to mitigate it. You can also, if a combat you think needs 3 dice, you can bring extra dice. So there's ways to mitigate it, but it can be frustrating if you roll low. It can hurt you quite a bit in this game. So there is that. But otherwise, I think it's a wonderful combination of worker placement and dice combat.
I do too, and it's got a lot of different options for you if you get blocked out of things, because you can build up people and go on completely different missions. Between the trolls and the Draugr and the monsters at the bottom, you have a lot of planning and preparation involved, especially if you need to do overkill like I do for the dice rolls. So you do have a lot of different things that you can do to get everything that you need, which I really like that. You don't feel like you're stuck getting any one thing.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
very solid game. I definitely enjoy it as well.
Yeah.
So if you like worker placement or dice rolling games, we highly recommend that you give this one a try. Thank you so much.
Cool catchphrase!
Hello folks, welcome to Corner Chat. I'm Mark. This week it's all about dice. We have with us game designer Chris Leader, the mind behind Roll For It, along with many other fantastic titles. Thanks for joining us today, Chris.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Chris, tell us, how did Roll For It evolve? Was it always a dice game?
Roll For It, well, yeah, it was always a dice game, and that's because my background is all about dice games. When I was a kid, it was Risk and it was Yahtzee. It was all dice rolling games because I just like the craziness of dice games. And Roll For It basically came out of the idea that I wanted my wife to sit down and play a game with me. You know, she didn't grow up playing games, so she doesn't really play them all that much. And I really wanted her, you know, just to sit down and play a game with me. So I had the idea one day of rolling dice and matching them to cards and scoring points, and amazingly she liked the idea a lot, and that's kind of where it grew from.
Any future plans for Roll For It? Expansions or other additions you can tell us about?
We don't have any major plans for expansions or new versions at the moment. You know, we're always open to that kind of thing. The main thing for me is that I want Roll For It in every corner of the globe. You know, I love hearing from people who are overseas playing it, and They're on a cruise ship playing it, things like that. So my dream is to walk into any gift shop in some crazy corner of the world, and they've got different dice games sitting there for you to buy, and Roll For It's right there. We always want to support the friendly local gaming store. That's the lifeblood of Calliope and the hobby. But I would love to see Roll For It in mass market as well, because our target demographic for the most part is mom, who makes a decision for the family about what they're going to buy and play. And so we love for Roll For It to be available anywhere that mom is shopping so that she can pick it up for the family.
So are there any great stories, great gaming moments in dice chucking that you can share related to Roll For It?
That's a good question. For me, I just like to hear stories about other people when they play the game and they pull off like some fantastic finishing move where they get that 15-point card and they win the game, they scoop it out from somebody else. I love to demo the game at conventions and have like hardcore gamers come to the table and be like, what is this? And then they end up really loving it when they try it and they want to play it again, and they pick it up because they realize that it might be right for one of their friends who doesn't like to play the heavier stuff but will play something lighter in between bigger things. So any of those things, I love hearing those stories. I just really like dice as an experience, something that allows you to have a story be told at the table. And that might be like camel up, rolling dice in the tension of seeing how many spaces you're going to move, or deciding how to use your dice like in King of Tokyo, or even deciding where to put your dice with Roll For It, which cards to go for. I just like those fun little choices that you can make when it comes to using dice.
Okay, so what are some of your favorite games as a designer that you pull inspiration from?
My favorite games change all the time. Once upon a time I would have told you it was, big, heavy civilization games. These days, it's things I can play quickly because I don't have a ton of time. As a dad, my kids are always pulling me different directions. So I love dice games. I love gateway games. That kind of niche is where I'm into right now. I love Nations, the dice game. I can play that all day. The games I love are ones I can play with my little boy. So things like Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert he's getting into. We love playing stuff like that. And I gotta say, I love the games that Foxtrot Games is coming out with. Lanterns is incredible, and I am absolutely a fanboy for their upcoming game, World's Fair 1893. As a Chicagoan and as someone who really just likes a good game, that one's just fantastic. So finally, I would say, I work with Calliope with the Titan series that was put up on Kickstarter, and so I've had the privilege of helping develop a lot of the games that they're providing for the Titan series. So people like Paul Peterson and Richard Garfield, they're just amazing. It's amazing to see what their take is on a gateway game, and I just love being a part of that.
So, Chris, in close, we must talk briefly about Shut Up and Watch Dice Hate Happen. Such a fantastic series. A humorous look at teaching board games. What was the inspiration and what's next?
Shut Up and Watch Dice Hate Happen. Yes, so I love Rodney Smith. I love what he does with Kiards. I love how he teaches. I use his videos all the time. And so we were at BGGCon 2 years ago, and we were just about to play Pandemic: The Cure, and Scott Morris put a video camera on me, and I was sitting there with Chris Kirkman and Mike Fitzgerald and a few others, and he said, "Teach the game." So I went, and we just improvised some junk, and it was just made ourselves laugh like crazy. And then we later did it again for Nations Dice, and so I decided I'm going to try to make a real show. So my main thing with the show is I love just to be goofy, but I don't make fun of the game itself. I'm making fun of myself being an idiot, but I'm thrilled with the reaction. I love that people love it, and I'm going to keep making more. I think I want to make an episode that it feels like Rahdo runs through, but with Connect 4. I think that would be a good episode. I'd like to teach Mysterium, but not actually with Mysterium. I'd like to use a copy of Dixit and a copy of Clue and teach Mysterium using those. I think that would work.
Okay, bonus question. Would you rather roll a 5 or a 6, and why?
I would rather roll a 42 for reasons that I think should be quite obvious.
Thanks, folks, for joining us today. And many thanks to our guest, Chris Leader. It was so great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
So until next time, we'll see you at the table.
No more questions.
Hey guys, Tiff here. This week we're talking about dice games, and we have quite a few to choose from at Board Game Club. I've already talked about the popularity of King of Tokyo, Escape Curse of the Temple, and Las Vegas. The kids love these games because of the surprise element of rolling the dice. That's always fun and exciting, but today I want to talk about a game that uses dice a little differently, and that game is Blueprints. Blueprints from Z-Man Games is a 2 to 4 player family game that usually plays in under a half hour. It's a set collection-y pattern building game where you take on the role of an architect competing to build award-winning structures with the various materials and blueprints provided over the course of 3 rounds. To start the game, each player is given a screen and a blueprint. Through the course of play, each player will construct a building made out of 6 dice behind the screen. This screen is particularly handy because it has all the different ways your building can score printed on it. Very nice for teenagers that tend to forget the rules as they play. After this, the dice pool is drawn from the bag and rolled. This pool represents various different building materials consisting of orange dice for wood, black dice for stone, clear dice for glass, and green dice, which represent recycled materials. Players take turns choosing a die from the pool to add to their blueprints. Once a die is taken from the pool, it's immediately replaced with a new die from the bag. The die a player chooses and where it's placed is heavily influenced by how that material scores. Each one scores differently. Wood scores based on adjacency, stone scores depending on its height in the building, glass is valued based on its face-up pips, and recycled materials score according to the quantity of green dice in the building. This means that depending on the types of materials available in the pool, it might be more beneficial for you to ignore the design of your blueprint. For example, if there are a bunch of black dice in the pool, you may just want to build a super high tower since that can yield more points than the 6 points you'll get for completing the shorter design of your blueprint. Of course, building a tower can be tricky since you can only stack dice of equal or greater value on top of one another. At the end of each round, players total their points on the score track and determine who wins the first, second, and third place awards and their associated number of points. Then the 4 different prize cards are awarded, each one worth 2 points. There's a prize for including all 6 dice faces in your design, and another one for using 4 or more dice with the same face value. The materials prize is given for using 5 or more of the same color dice in your structure, and finally the skyscraper prize is given for building a tower 5 or more dice high. After the round, the score trackers go back to 0, the dice are returned to the bag, and the process is repeated for 2 more rounds of building. After the 3rd round, each player adds up the points they've earned from their prize and award cards to determine who was the best architect and the winner of the game. I like Blueprints for my middle school board game club because it shows them how dice can be used to create a strategic game. So much of their early gaming involves roll and move, it's nice to expose them to games that take a different approach. Not only does Blueprints teach them planning, but it forces them to adapt their plans based on the types of dice that are available during the round. It's intuitive enough to teach in a minute or 2, which is great for impatient, can we just start playing type players. In my experience, that's all teenagers. The only thing that can trip them up is that the endgame scoring is based only on the prize and award cards, and the score track gets wiped clean at the end of the round. Once that's clear, they're good to go. I highly recommend Blueprints if you're looking for a quick, inexpensive way to add some strategy to your family game night. Check it out, and I'll see you back next time.
Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Real Talk with Sam. Thank you for being a friend of the blend and for watching this show. Well, today we're talking about dice games, and hey, that is right down my alley. Sort of in my wheelhouse, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to enjoy talking about two of the games that I really enjoy as dice games, but I tried to narrow it down a little bit, not just using dice, rolling, okay, got a 6, rolling, got a 4. No, these two games that I've chosen are actually kind of special in that they use dice, yes, but they use dice in more than just one way. And so, just the rolling of them. They flip it around a little bit. So let's get to it. So first of all, I'd like to talk about this guy right here, Quantum. Now, Quantum is actually a pretty cool game that uses just regular 6-sided dice, but the dice that come in the box are banging. They are really, really nice dice, and I enjoy them a lot. They're nice and chunky, and they're not little dinky ones, and so I really enjoy the dice, first of all. Secondarily, the way the dice are used is really cool because the die face that's showing on the top not only shows you how far that die can move, the dice represent ships in your armada, so to speak, and it not only tells you how far they can move, but it also tells you what kind of ship they are and the special ability that comes with that ship. And so the whole point of Quantum here is you're trying to fly throughout the galaxy gathering resources to build your quantum cubes, and the first person to build their quantum cubes is the winner. And so that's the cool thing about Quantum, is that it uses dice, and not just the rolling of them, it also, the face that's showing is important, and not only for a couple of different things, the special ability that it can do, and also how far it can move. So I really enjoyed Quantum for those two reasons of how they use the dice, not just as showing a numerical value, but also they added in a couple other mechanisms to that numerical value. So I really enjoy Quantum. If you haven't had a chance to try it, give it a whirl. I think you'll enjoy it. The next game I'd like to talk about is this guy right here, Steampunk Rally. Now, when this first came out, I gave it a whirl at one of our game nights before we got our review copy of it, and I was kind of enamored with it. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's an okay game. It's not a great game in my opinion, but it's very fun, and it's actually pretty thematic. The whole idea of Steampunk Rally is that you all are taking on the personas of different inventors from out history. That's the first thing I liked about it. It was a historically based game. And you're trying to build these contraptions because you're using those contraptions to go on a race through the mountains in the Alps. And I just thought it was a pretty cool idea, building all these different scientists from history, building these contraptions just to fly them or run them in a race. I thought it was a really cool idea. But it comes with a lot of dice, just regular old 6-siders, but the way you use the 6-siders are very cool and a thematic, memorable experience. Steampunk Rally, check it out. And hey, listen folks, I'm just trying to keep it real. See you on the flip side.
Hey everybody, so today I'm talking about two designers for my Designer Spotlight. It's because they co-designed some games that involve dice very heavily. And those designers are Eric Lang and Mike Elliott. They came up a few years ago with a great game called Quarriors. Now this game uses dice, and lots of dice. It's sort of a take on Dominion, but instead of having cards in a randomly shuffled deck, you have dice in a randomly pulled out of a bag. When you use those dice, you roll them, so you're getting double randomness, not just the randomness of the bag, but you get the second randomness of the actual dice. But it's a lot of fun to roll those dice. Some sides give you, I guess, coins or money, so you could buy more different dice, and the other ones give you creatures where you could attack the other players or defend yourself, essentially. The game played very much like Dominion, but with dice. It was a very good game. Later on, a few years later, they came up with one of my favorite games of all time, and that's Dice Masters. Look at this right here. Look at all these dice. This is what you get. You get superheroes, you get Dungeons and Dragons, you get everything. You get Marvel heroes, you get the X-Men, you get Spider-Man, you get everything. You also get DC, you get Superman, you get Wonder Woman, you get Batman, you get it all. And this game, unlike Warriors, wasn't a multiplayer game. It's a two-player game, so it's a more combat-based game where you're fighting against the other player. You don't have to attack every turn. You could attack when you want. It's much more strategic. It plays more like Warriors, but they took the concept and turned it more into a Magic-style game, which I think is great. I think the combat system's great. The cards, collecting all of the different superheroes is great. Obviously, if you're playing Dungeons & Dragons, it gives you leveling up and a lot of powers of Dungeons & Dragons. It's just a phenomenal game. And it's one that I would highly recommend. I know it's harder to find now because WizKids had limited the online production of it. But still, I would say if you can find any Dice Masters anywhere, go get it, because Dice Masters is phenomenal and definitely worth getting. The great guys that designed both Warriors and Dice Masters, Eric Lang and Mike Elliott.
Hey guys, I'm Roy Cannon, and this week we're going to be talking all about dice. So if you're new to board gaming, I'm sure everybody knows what dice are. You roll dice, you move your character along the board, you try not to land on your opponent's hotels, but this week we're going to take a look at some other mechanics just besides roll and move. First, we're going to take a look at a pressure luck game called Zombie Dice. Zombie Dice is a competitive game for 2 or more players by designer Steve Jackson. The goal of the game is to be the first player to collect 13 brains. You do so by rolling 3 dice at a time, trying not to get shotguns. On your turn, you roll 3 dice, setting aside any brains or shotguns rolled. If you roll feet, they'll be re-rolled again if you choose to proceed. This is where the pressure luck comes in. You can stop and keep all the brains you've currently collected, or you can continue, but if you get 3 shotguns, you'll lose all the brains you've collected. This can lead to some really exciting turns, especially when people press their luck a little bit too far. There's also a dinosaur re-theme called Dino Hunt, if you're not a fan of zombies, or for kids. When you're just starting out into the hobby, these little dice games are really great. You can basically teach anybody, especially non-gamers, how to pick this up. I've played it with my brother and sister-in-law, and my wife, and like some of her other family. It's been a lot of fun and super quick and light. But now we're going to talk about a little bit more epic of a game. We're going to talk about Battlelore 2nd Edition. Battlelore is a 2-player competitive game by designer Richard Borg. In Battlelore, players play fantasy armies facing off against each other, trying to claim objectives and be the first to get 15 victory points. Combat in Battlelore is resolved by dice. The swords count as hits, the flag causes your opponent to retreat, the target hits in ranged combat, the crown allows your units to use their special abilities in combat, and the diamonds represent lore, which you can use to cast powerful spells. On their turn, players will play command cards to command units in the right, left, and center of the board in true Command and Colors fashion. This game is all about setting your units up to control the strategic banners to gain victory points, and also completing the victory point conditions on your scenario. Strategy in this game can begin before you even roll the first die when you set up your faction, with all sorts of different units to choose from. With all the expansions that Fantasy Flight has put out for this game so far, there's a wide variety of unit types and epic combinations you can create. Battlelore definitely feels epic with these giant beasts and armies clashing against each other as you roll dice and command your units, trying to claim objectives and be glorious upon the field of battle. One of the things I love about the dice in Battlelore is the fact that you're not always just trying to get hits in combat. Sometimes you really want your opponent to retreat so that you can go on to the objective. Or maybe you want to get the crown so your unit can trigger its special abilities. And even if you just get lore, at least you're getting more resources to be able to cast your powerful lore cards, which can totally change the face of the combat and the board. The minis in this game are awesome. If you're looking for a light war game with combat face-to-face with awesome scenario setup, definitely make sure to check out Battlelore 2nd Edition. And that's been our dice games for this week, so make sure to check us out from easy to epic again, and we'll see you guys next time.
And that wraps up our dice episode, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, a big thank you to all my contributors, and I hope you will come back in a couple of weeks and check us out as we do our 2-player episode. I am calling it It Takes Two, and it's also the episode this year that's releasing closest to Valentine's Day, so it's also going to be a pseudo-Valentine's episode, so come on back for that. And as always, hey, stay a friend of the blend. I'll see you.